G'day everybody, Duckville here. We've got a Terran vs. Zerg coming at you right now. It is going to be on Newkirk Precinct, of course, one of the maps which was unfortunately removed recently in the ladder change, or, unfortunately, who knows, perhaps it wasn't your cup of tea. We'll see if it is going to be the cup of tea of these particular players here, starting at the top, or the bottom left-hand side of this map is our red Terran player, currently playing for WiLD Gaming, or WiLD Esports Gaming, I can't remember the team name, something like that. It is Breach. He is a Hungarian Terran player who has been around for a very long time, since the Brood War days. It was formerly known in Brood War for doing a little bit of unconventional stuff. So he's one of those players who might have used nukes. He might have used Dark Archons a little bit more than some of the other players. Perhaps he used Queens and things if he was playing Zerg. Which, for those of you who may be new to StarCraft 2 but haven't ever played some Brood War, the Queens were a very interesting thing. They weren't the same sort of thing as they are today in SC2. Speaking of Queens, our Zerg player down at the bottom right-hand side as our blue Zerg is awake. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to make any, I'll try not to make any puns regarding being awake or anything like that. If I do, count them up and post them in the comments, because I'm pretty sure I'll do my best not to. I try not to be too punny, because it gets in the way of casting sometimes if you're trying to be funny, especially if you're solo, because I have to sit here and laugh at my own jokes, and it's like, geez, what's wrong with you, Duckville? Anyway, Awake's going to go for a hatch first here, of course, as you normally would. This map was removed from the ladder pool. I think that there were some, I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf, because I'm just going to say this personally from my behalf. I think that some players found that Zerg had a very good time on this map. Now, stick with me for a minute here, guys. Now, we're just looking at some of the extra bases here. We've got a very quick third, which you can take. A fourth, which is relatively easy. It's easy to drop this base, of course. Yes, if you are playing against a dropping Terran, they can just come in here and drop all over this place. But it also has a very segmented sort of style. This sort of map is something that someone like Root Cats would love to play on, because you can separate the map down the middle here and then just sort of sit in a very turtley situation. And that's somewhere where I know a lot of Zerg players won't, they may not recognize exactly what I'm talking about, but there are certain turtle styles where you can bring out a lot of swarm hosts, a lot of spine crawlers and spore crawlers, some vipers and these kinds of things, and sit in a position where you can just fortify your half of the map and slowly but surely starve your opponent out. I'm not sure if that was why this map was removed straight away. In fact, I would love to hear you guys, your responses. Why do you think the Newkirk was removed from the map? I didn't particularly have too much of an issue with this map. I did have a kind of a bad win-loss ratio on this map, but still. Let's get over that. We'll talk about what's going on right now. Breach has come across with putting a bunker down at the right next to that hatchery there. Of course, Awake would have been able to see that, but now he's got a Reaper all up in his shizzle, and we'll see what he's going to be able to do with this. Of course, the Reaper will be safe for the moment inside that bunker. Will regen some of its health as long as it's in there for enough time. And I tell you what, I love the folks at Blizzard for doing this. If you have a building that suddenly gets corrupted by some creep, it becomes a creeped building. And it's a little bit of a cool thing to see. Just a small little addition, of course, along with the, the new physics engine, the new death animations, all these kinds of things. Little cool things that Blizzard have added in. So Breach doesn't really get too much done there. It puts a little bit of damage on the hatchery. I believe he may have taken out one ling, maybe? Yeah, took out one ling. That was it. But not too much damage done there, considering that he did get that bunker down. So not too much pressure coming across. All he wants to do is just say, alright, gonna force you to have to build some extra lings here, because this is not what Awake wanted to do. At this point, what you really want to have to do is maybe a maximum of 6 lings, sometimes 8, but at the moment this guy has now got 11 lings. He obviously built 12, so that is not at all where he wants to be right now. That could have been extra drones. It could have been a little bit higher in the drone count. But what he is going to do after all of that is he is going to power up those drones. So Awake is going to just move himself into a nice economic position. As we can see, 8 drones just popping out, heading on down to the natural expansion there. We'll see how he goes. It looks like a quick third base is also on the way from our Zerg player. Meanwhile, back at home for Breach, we've got that reacted racks there at the front door. We'll see if that adds in some factories as well. But a secondary factory is there, and Awake has seen this. So he will be aware that it's most likely going to be some Blue Flame Hellions. This is, of course, a build which hasn't been as popular. I don't think it has been as popular in Heart of the Swarm as it tended to. It sort of spiked in Wings of Liberty. The Blue Flame builds would just come back every now and then, and certain players would utilize the build and just sort of say, hey, you're not going to be freely able to drone up and use mass lings. Of course, in the advent, after the advent of Startail Life, who was a very high Zergling user, a lot of players just said, well, what a bad against, you know, what's good against Zerglings? And everyone said, well, Blue Flame Hellions. So the build has come back for a little while at the end of Wings of Liberty, and we did see that in, of course, the GSL Codes Finals. So we do see the Breach is going to go for that particular tech getting started on the Blue Flame now. A couple of Hellions are going to make their way across the map. I don't think that Awake should take too much damage from this. What I would like to see is perhaps one, maybe two Spine Crawlers up here at the ramp along with an Evo Chamber. Of course, what you will normally see is an Evo Chamber wall, something like this, with maybe a Spine or two off to the side, some Queens coming in to sort of protect the entry point there as well. But for the moment, it looks like he's not going to go for any of that. He's going to try and rely on some of these Queens to help out with the defense. Some Lings are now popping out as well. And I think that Awake, well, he sort of seems a little bit unprepared for this right now. Once the Blue Flame kicks in, these Hellions are going to roast those Lings apart. Though that bonus damage will kick in and do so much here. We'll see if Breach does lose some of the Hellions here. Loses one across to the side, maybe a second one here as well. But no, reinforcements come along, and it looks like the majority of the Lings got left back at home. Unfortunately for Awake, loses some of those. And we do see that wall finally go up. Roachborn, Evo Chamber, no Spines though, so keep that in mind. We'll see how much damage Breach is able to do here, because he is going to be building up that Hellion count. We've currently got a total of 11 out on the map, so more just making their way across now. But Breach has been able to establish his natural. He's gotten that all up and running, and now we can see that he will be able to get some damage done. Even a Reaper still kept in the loop there, because it is as fast as these units. If you do have fast units, keep them together. You know, and that's what he's going to be doing here. But now we see the Blue Flame Hellions pushing inside. This is the problem with having no Spine and no Queen defense at the top of the ramp there. Drones going down by the dozen here. In fact, it is probably more than a dozen. A couple of Roaches will pop out. Drones down at the third base, still unprotected for the moment, and the Hellions make their way inside the main. Will they be able to get any more kills done? I think maybe one more. Yes, gets another one there, and Breach will now power his way inside the third base as well. More drones up for grabs. We'll have a look at the worker kill tally in just a second once these final Hellions go down, which I think they will. There they go. And what do you think? Place your bets right now. 1, 2, 3. What do you think has been done? Go. And it was 25 drones are being killed off by our Terran player here. So Breach, a wonderful start to the game for him. It looks like he will be moving into mech right now. Double Armories back at the main base. I did have a look at Breach's Facebook page. If you want to jump on, I believe it's Breach_HU or something like that. I'll try and link it if I remember. But he does like a little bit of mech, so I do like to see players who like to try this kind of thing. Hellion's still trying to get some more damage done. One more worker goes down, but the Roaches will fend that off for the time being. And a lot of players will tell you, you need to get a lot of damage done at the start with mech. You need to destroy a whole heap of these drones, as we can see the Breach has done. Now what this does, you sort of think, well, what does killing all those drones do? What does that mean for me? What does it mean for mech? Well, what this means is that timings are very much delayed. There's a few timings that come across, of course. Your average muter timing will come along a little bit later than normal. You will see a lot of drones getting built here, of course. That means that Breach is going to go up to a decent total right now. He's got 52 at the moment. More are coming along, but he's still relatively low compared to where he would normally be at this point. Of course, he does have those 5 hatcheries up and running. Roaches are going to try and force off the rest of these Hellions here, but Awake is, he's, for a short time, while he powers up, he's going to be struggling, just while he tries to get that drone count back up and running. He will be able to get some of these upgrades coming along very soon, but what we'll be interested in is the composition that he's going to use once he scouts out that mech is on the way. So far, he hasn't actually seen that it is going to be mech just as of yet, but as we can see, Breach is just going to move out very quickly along to his own 4th base, just along to the side here. I think that is one nice advantage of this map, is that taking a 4th base as a mech Terran is very easy to do. Reasons for that include, as you can see here, we can get a zone of separation here that protects not only your 3rd base down here, but also the 4th down to the side as well. So, and then the other you get the same sort of effect over here at the natural as well. We can see that this sort of zone protects not only the natural but also the third base. So if you can separate these sorts of areas here, just zone your opponent out, don't allow him to get in. Mines, of course, the tanks as well. If you could stop the Zerg from getting in, you've got a very, very tasty 4 bases, which means 8 gas, which is exactly what a Mech Terran player wants. They want to be able to power up these upgrades as fast as they can. 2-2 is going to get started, or at least +2 to weapons is already started here for Breach, but he doesn't have +1 on the, +2 on the armor just as of yet. But Muta's now going to sweep their way across. We'll see how much damage they are able to get done. It looks like the fort's relatively unprotected. Of course, a big issue of dealing with this sort of thing is that you do extend yourself relatively far here. A couple of Vikings will be able to defend against this, but not for long. If the Mutas come back across, they may be able to take the Vikings down, but a few Widow Mines now positioned at the back there will be able to get some damage done on the Mutas. We'll see how much damage they can actually do. Actually pushing straight into the jaws of those mines, and the trap has been set and has been triggered. So the Mutas are now down into very low health. They'll be forced to back off, and Breach will be safe for the time being against these the prawns with wings, as we like to say here. So, Awake, let's have a look at what he's up to. We've got a 5th hatchery on the way, that or the macro hatch inside the main, a 6th up towards the top side here as well. Mine's just moving around, trying to get into a better position. A couple of Marines will protect them for the moment, but Breach... Awake, he's also got the +1 on the Carapace and missile weapons on the way. I do like this decision here. We've got the Infestation Pit, we've got the Hydras. What you want to try and do is buy some time for Swarm Host to get out. You want to see Swarm Host Viper as the main composition against Mech. Why do you want Swarm Host Viper, you ask? Well, Viper's Blinding Cloud. Need I say more? You just throw down a couple of blinding clouds on areas of these tanks here. In fact, we'll make that green. There you go. That's the blinding cloud for you. Throw that down on the tanks. They're utterly useless to defend against things such as the locusts that can push across once they pop out of those swarm hosts. So we'll see if Awake is going to move up towards that tech. He's currently sitting on a total of 83 drones right now. We're going to have, well, almost 5 bases nicely saturated with, of course, that extra little bit of gas coming in, which will certainly help him out in moving up towards that hive tech. And we can see he's already there at the hive. We've got 4 Vipers on the way. Hydra's now coming out, muscular augments, and of course those 2-2 upgrades are just now on their way too. So things looking pretty decent for Awake. I'll be very interested to see how he plays this. If you're watching WCS America and watching the group with Illusion and Moonglade, if you weren't, I certainly would advise it. If you were, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But there was a match between Maker and Moonglade where a very similar style to this particular game occurred. And so we'll be checking out, of course, how Awake deals with the mech, and then how Breach decides to push across. Looks like we've got a lot of tanks. We've got a tank count up at roughly 8 at the moment. 3 Hellbats are out on the map. We've got roughly 3 Thors as well, along with a couple of leftover Marines just patrolling about, trying to protect against those mutas, but not too much to worry about for them. So upgrades still looking good. +2 to armor on the way, +3 to weapons is also coming through now for those vehicles, and it looks like the drilling claws is just about to complete as well. So Breach is a player. If you had a look at White Ra versus Breach, Breach loves to use Widow Mines, and I tell you what, I don't blame him at all. These guys are really useful at dealing with large forces. If you can maneuver them into position, if drilling claws is up and running, get them underneath your opponent as quickly as you can while the rest of your mech sets up, you can blast apart a very large force of units very quickly here. And well, we'll see if he's going to continue up with that trend. We've got 5 factories now just finishing up. He's going to add on those extra little buildings there. We've got various additions here. We've got some tech labs. We've got some reactors as well. Majority will be tech labs, just so that he can get out that large count of Thors, tanks, all these kinds of things that are very important for a mech army. And Awake looks to be, what is he up to right now? He's dealing a little bit of damage down here at the main base. Looks like a supply depot is the target of choice here, but the Vikings will come through, should be able to force that back. And they do. There you go. So the mutas are now forced back. It looks like a couple more shots coming through. One muta will survive on very low health, and we do have more Vipers that have run into a couple of Widow Mines. They're very unlucky for Awake. He's going to be forced to back off. There is no way he can continue this attack with just 2 Vipers. You're going to need more blinding clouds than that, my friend. Especially given the fact that Breach has been able to separate his tanks. For Terran players out there, if you're watching this and thinking, alright, well I know that Swarm Hosts and Vipers is a very strong way to deal with mech, how do I deal with it myself? There are a couple of things. One is that you get out these Vikings. These guys are very important at zoning out those Vipers. If you can keep these guys out of the battle's pretty much already won for you there, because without Blinding Cloud, it's very difficult to try and push against the large mech force. When the tanks siege up, when the Thors get prepared, it is very hard to try and take them down. And as we can see, Breach is going to do his best to try and move in here, trying to separate a little bit, takes out maybe one of those Vipers if he can. The Mine's now chasing after the rest of these units there, burrowing and unburrowing as quickly as can be. And now we can see he's going to move into position here. The Hydra is actually shooting down a lot of the mines. Only 3 actually get out into position. One mine shot does get off, takes a little bit out of some of the roaches there, but now we can see that Awake is in full retreat right now. Just a total of 6 Swarm Hosts out on the field right now. I would love to see him picking up more, but he's still researching some of these upgrades. Enduring Locust, Carapace +2 to flyer attacks, and 3/3 on those missile ground units are now on the way. So Breach is putting himself into a position where he can siege up, but will it be enough? There are 4 Vipers out here, in fact 5 Vipers I should say. We'll see what they're able to get done. A couple get taken out quick, smart buy, the Vikings up in the air. Blinding Clouds go down. Keep in mind the Blinding Cloud does not affect Widow Mines, but it does affect the tanks. And we can see what damage this kind of composition can do. It does quite well. The Hydras do really nicely in general once the Blinding Cloud is prepared, but against those Widow Mines in the ground, once the tanks are out of the Blinding Cloud and they've got their cool goggles on, then they're able to really power down those Hydras as quickly as can be. So Breach was able to take out the Vipers. We've got no Vipers left out on the field now, and Awake is in a little bit of a troublesome position. He has to resupply on Roaches and Hydras, so we'll see if he can defend against this mech push, which is now going to be coming back along. The Widow Mines arrayed across here in a nice little line. They're going to soak up some of the damage there, and Hydra's getting blown apart. Look at that body. That just flew about. That was really crazy. But we've got the Hydras and Roaches now making their way across. It looks like the last tank will be taken down, and Awake, he's going to hold this back for now, but not after suffering quite a lot of damage himself, and now losing some of these randomly placed overlords as well. So Breach has been able to continuously stream across some of these units here. We've got more tanks that have linked up with the rest of his forces. He's going to clean up some of this creep spread here. A very decent creep spread, I might add, from Awake. And with the Swarm Host not numbering in a large amount just as of yet, I'm not sure if this is going to do too well for Awake. He's going to have to back off for the moment. Yes, he does. He's forced back for the moment. Is bringing out more Swarm Hosts though. We've got 6 more on the way. 7 Corruptors are also being built. We may see that switch into perhaps a couple of Broodlords, which may be interesting. He may be able to try and push in this way. In fact, hang on, let's get that right. He may be able to try and get some Broodlords into position here to attack in the 4th base. If he can deny some of the mining there at the 4th, then Breach may slow down with some of his production. As we can see back at home with all those factories in operation, 10 factories pumping out Widow Mines, Hellbats, tanks, and of course the couple of Vikings that are also being built at a time as well. Breach is just continually able to stream these units across, and I'm not sure if Awake has enough to deal with this, but let's see. Blinding Clouds going down, number 1, number 2, and maybe number 3 at the back, but Widow Mines clean up the Vipers. Vikings do the rest of the damage there, and despite, well, in fact, he actually does a pretty decent job pushing through some of the tanks, but once the tanks are out of the Blinding Cloud yet again, lighting up the sky with the siege tank fire and able to blast down those Hydras, bodies being blown apart everywhere there, and Awake is just left with a few Swarm Hosts in the ground. We've got 6 over here, not a massive total. And now we can see with the scan going down, I don't think that Awake wants to hang around here for too long, but he will move the units back, sort of just fall back for a moment here while the tanks are slowly ping-ponging their way across here into this base. And with a quick siege up here, I think we might see Breach just obliterate everything, because the Vipers don't have enough energy to do much, but the Broodlords will not come across. It looks like a little bit of damage being done at the top side here. One random tank has made its way across for Breach there, and the Broodlords will force those units back. So there are a couple of useful units here from a day gone by. You don't often see the Broodlords these days. Most people loving to go into Ultralists, and as we said, the common sort of way to deal with mech is to get out some Swarm Hosts and some Vipers. they're going to go to town on some of these buffet buildings here. In fact, these aren't really buffet buildings. He's just taking down a hatchery, an extractor, and some evo chambers here. I'm not really sure about that. Awake needs to perhaps throw down a couple of hatcheries. He could help out with his buffet buildings, which are, of course, if you're new to my little terminology there, the buffet buildings, the buildings that Vipers want to eat to get their energy back with their consume skill. You can often see hatcheries and, of course, those evo chambers as well used as the buffet buildings. But anyway, let's move on from that. Interesting composition here from Awake. He's moved into the free trade army agreement here where we've got the free broodlings. We've also got those free locusts for those swarm hosts on the ground. But Breach, what's his composition? We're sitting at a large counter tank still. He's been able to just consistently pump those tanks out. We've got Hellbats now thrown into the mix as well. A couple of mines will move their way across the map here, but the Broodlords up in the sky don't really have anything to contest them at this point. And so they're going to be able to rain fire down on the tanks on the ground, or rain broodlings, however you want to look at it. Widow Mine's getting some damage done across to the side here, but it looks like with a couple of ducks, we will see a Thor get picked off there. Very nicely done by Awake to pull that random Thor back. The Thors, when they're in the high impact payload mode, do a ridiculous amount of damage. And we can see that Awake is starting to move his way back across. He's up at 192 supply. He's got 88 drones mining away quite nicely at all of his bases still. And he's in a very strong position right now. As I said, I'm not particularly sure about this composition. I think if Breach is able to just crank out a couple of Vikings, he may be able to deal with this very swiftly. But we'll see. Widow Mines coming across, trying to get some damage done, but unfortunately their target only finds the Broodlings there, and now we can see that the Broodlords are slowly going to make their way across. The Swarm Host down in the ground, sending out those Locusts, going to get some damage done on this planetary fortress here, but will it be enough? This is the big question. We've now got Thors starting to come out. We've got a total of 3 Thors out of the map, plus the 7 Vikings up in the sky, and the Corruptors coming across are going to be in no way enough to hold back those Vikings. In fact, I'm a little bit surprised. Oh, there you go. Alright, so I was going to say more Corruptors would have been nice here from Awake, but he has got a couple more, which have... Don't do that, Awake. He's going to switch a couple... Yeah, there you go. Very good. Thank you for listening, Awake. Very nice of you. So he does keep a lot of these Corruptors here. We've got a total of 11, which is not a huge amount, but it is a nice amount to deal with these Vikings. But will he be able to deal with it? The Widow Mine's burrowing in the ground, and the Corruptors get blasted apart by the Widow Mines there. The Vikings will probably control the sky here, I think. Thor's on the ground, getting fungal growth underneath a blinding cloud. Very masterfully done there by Awake. But will it be enough? Broodlings, Locusts on the ground? I don't think so. Broodlords get taken out by the few remaining Vikings. Those Thors on the ground doing their massive damage there on the Punisher cannons. 30 damage at a range of 10. Pretty huge burst damage there from those Thors. And now, as we can see, we've got Awake now switching into Ultra Tech. Not the best idea at this point. I'll tell you what, I've been playing Zerg a little bit lately, and I tell you what is not a good thing to do. Trying to use a large amount of Ultralists against a huge mech force like this, when you have a grand total of basically no Vipers out of the field. If you do not have Blinding Cloud, you will not win. 3-3 tanks with 34 damage against Armored in their Pong Pong mode, and what is it, like 65 damage when they're in their Siege mode, is just far too much for the slow, bumbling Ultralist to deal with there. So we'll see how Awake is going to deal with this. This is going to be very, very interesting to see. He does have 5-2 on his upgrades on the ground. He does have, up in the air, he's got 2-3. That's why those Broodlords are doing a sizable amount of damage here. But Breach, now starting to finish up his own upgrades. He's got +3 on the ship weapons, just about started there, and there we go. And he's sitting in a decent... he's sitting in a decent spot. Like, the only reason I'm saying that is because there's a very low Viper count up in the air here. Vikings spreading out here, trying to soak up as much damage as they can. Thors and tanks getting caught out underneath the blinding cloud. That is a beautiful position for the Ultras to be in. However, they were very clumped up moving through this narrow space here. Very, very narrow, pretty much fitting only 3 or 4 Ultras through at a time, and that actually limited the DPS that they had, so perhaps not the best situation. And we see a very similar thing happening again here by Awake, so he's losing Ultras. He's starting to whittle away some of that mech army, but he is now going to lose this this inner middle base here, and I'm not sure if this is going to bode well for Awake. We see him starting to fall back, drones are getting out of there as quickly as they can, Broodlords are morphing in now again for Awake. He's got 5 on the way. Will that be enough? We'll see. With the Neuroparasite now being researched by Awake as well, that may add a little bit of an interesting factor to the engagements, but we'll see if Breach is going to go for that. I'm not sure if he's ready to attack just as of yet. Wants to make sure he's got that consistent remax right now. We may even see him sacrificing some more of those SCVs. He could probably throw down, you know, there you go. I was going to say, he's probably got mules galore ready to go right now. But he's actually been on top of that for a lot of the game. Silly me for downing Breach. And here we go. It looks like the Thor's going to defend for the moment. Ultralisk down on the ground. We do have a couple of Overseers here, so they should be able to scout out those Widow Mines down in the ground, but not before being blasted apart by the Vikings up in the air. And the Vikings will try and find some sweet spots on those Corruptors there. Do take them out. The Widow Mines blasting some of those Ultralisks apart, and the tanks in just simple non-siege mode are ripping apart those Ultralisks here, and the Broodlords up in the sky are the only thing that Awake has powering away this attack right now. But with the Thors down on the ground, the couple of Vikings left up in the sky, those Broodlords are not long for this world right now. And Breach slowly starts to make his way across the map here. I think we'll see him push up towards the top side, and Awake starting to show signs that he is in a very, very troublesome spot right now. When you see floods of Lings like this is either because the Zerg is about to win and they just want to spam out a whole bunch of units, or it's because they are gas-starved and they need some way to get some harassment done. And that is exactly what we can see from Awake here, with a large investment into the Ultralisk earlier on, and now with a secondary batch now on their way, he's really starting to struggle with that gas. And while some of these Lings will be able to take down some of those tanks there, I don't think this is going to bode too well here for our Zerg player in Awake. Loses his 6th base towards the top side, but is able to get some good damage done on Breach's economy here. Losing the 4th base, losing the 3rd. Breach is actually down to a very low mineral mining right now, just apart from this main base here in the middle. It doesn't actually have a huge amount. And as we can see, the main army is now starting to get torn apart by some of these Ultralisks here. The last Ultralist with 5-3, making its way through the Thors, chomping through like butter. And the Lings will finish off the job there. So Awake does hold his own for the moment, but the big factor here is that he is really starving for gas. But then again, so is Breach. With the delay on this base here at the bottom, the bottom sort of left-hand side, Breach has been struggling for a little bit of his own gas right now, and he'll have to just hold together for the moment. We'll probably see a lot of Hellbats come out for him. You know, I mentioned before, you can sort of tell when a Zerg player is struggling for gas is when you start seeing just huge amounts of Lings out on the map. What deals with large amounts of Lings? Hellbats, 6 at a time coming out from Breach. We'll see what they are going to be able to do. A couple are defending here at the top left-hand side base. The 5th base of Breach still staying alive. Going to rebuild some of those refineries there to get things back in the mix for him. And now we can see more Lings just continuing to pour their way out of Awake here. He is really starting to struggle for that gas. His main base, of course, devoid of gas. His 3rd is also pretty low as well. Yeah, just a little bit left in that. The 4th is also gone, and the 6th up towards the top side has been constantly attacked and harassed horrendously there by Breach. But now moving into position on this base here, this could be very crucial. It looks like a couple of very clever infestors there, throwing down some of the infested Terrans right on top of the Widow Mine, soaking up a lot of that damage there, saving a little bit of time. The Ultras now moving into the fight. Will they be able to get much damage done? It looks like with the Thors here, 3-3 on those Thors, they are slowly able to power their way through those Ultras, and things are starting to look a little bit scary here for our Blue Zerg player. As the Thor count starts to increase, we're slowly increasing the count of Thors. Of course, it's not too easy when your gas income is just sitting at a total of 128 per minute. But Breach is slowly able to add some more Thors in. He's going to use these Hellbats as backup on the ground. And of course, you know, we mentioned before, what goes quite well with Zerglings in a salad, and it's Hellbats. They're going to be able to just blast apart these Lings here. They do have 3-3, which is all nice and good, but when you're dealing with those Hellbats that do that crazy 39 damage in a splash against Light, I don't think this is going to go too well. And Awake agrees. He is forced to tap out. No GG, but whatever. It's a very long and tiresome game between these two. 40 minutes on the game clock there. And what a really interesting game. Back and forth a little bit during the latter stages of the game. But Awake, I think he started moving towards that correct composition. The Vipers and the Swarm Host. But just when he started losing some of the Vipers, who was consistently losing the Vipers in fights, and then the Swarm host just never really reappeared. So we see him fall down to wonderful mech play here from Breach. Of course, a player that I'm certainly going to be on the lookout for on his stream, and also, you can, as I said, you can catch him on Facebook as well. Hope you all enjoyed that match. I'll catch you all next time. Going on there, a la Grubby or someone like that, and it looks as if Neeb is just going to get a really nice amount of damage done there inside the main, picking off the Lings. Not necessarily economic damage in of itself, but he is able to just downsize the amount of map presence